to take an attendance vote. Will the clerk close the roll? A quorum is present. So good evening. This will be the first meeting of the Privilege and Election Subcommittee on Elections Administration. We've got a pretty solid docket today. We have quite a robust amount of testimony here today, so we will be trying to be as efficient as possible. We've got a couple items of business to take care of, just to move the docket along first. So I'd like to call up the first bill, if it's a patron here. We're going to go ahead and take up HB 565, which we would love a motion to pass that by for the day.
So moved.
Second.
Has been moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes by a voice vote. All right, the next bill we'll take up out of order is HB 941, Delegate Shin.
Testing, great. Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and thanks for this opportunity to present House Bill 941 to you today. The bill addresses accessibility of early voting for college students, which is a significant issue in our electoral process. The bill proposes the establishment of at least one voter satellite location on campuses of any baccalaureate public institution of higher education with a student body of 3,000 or more enrolled students. This would be to ensure that our young voters have a reasonable and accessible way to participate in our democracy. As it stands, a lot of students find it challenging to vote due to the distance of early voting offices from their campuses. Some students are faced with the dilemma of traveling several miles away, which can be a significant barrier, especially for students who live on campus without personal access to a vehicle. States like New York and Maryland have already enacted similar legislation requiring polling places on college campuses, which significantly improves accessibility for students. A few college campuses offer election day polling locations and have their own precinct, but that is day of election polling locations. But that does not necessarily mean that it accommodates the needs of students who want to vote early. So in 2020, 74% of college campuses in the country had no in-person voting options, including early voting, and 90% of campuses in the country lacked early voting options specifically. Students who have easier access to voting options, like on-campus polling places, are more likely to vote. I also believe that facilitating student participation in our democratic processes early on can develop a habit of civic engagement that will last a lifetime, encouraging them to be participants and active participants of our democracy. With a diverse student population, including a significant number of low-income and first-generation students in Virginia, I think an on-campus early voting option is a step towards building a more robust and inclusive democracy. In conclusion, HB 941 is not just about facilitating voting for a specific group, but it's about strengthening our democracy by making it more accessible, inclusive, and ensuring that more voices can be heard, especially for those of young folks. I hope the committee will look favorably upon this bill. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee for the patron?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Delegate Blackton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple questions on this. I'm assuming the schools are going to pay for this, or is this going to be taken out of the registrar's budget, or do you have a budget amendment?
We did not have a budget amendment into it, but I imagined it being a responsibility of the locality and the registrar's office.
All right, so the follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this would be what we call an unfunded mandate to the locality then, is the way I, okay. Follow-up question, Madam Chair, on, I think, I'm pretty sure ODU had this actually, and they asked Norfolk to close it. just kind of curious as to parking on colleges. Is this satellite office going to be open to the general public also?
Delegate, or Madam Chair, I would say that yes, in theory, the college campus early voting location would be open to voters who are not just college campus students.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask the patron a couple of questions as well, too.
You have the floor.
Okay, so these satellite campus voting registration offices will be for the entire 45-day period?
No, sir, or Madam Chair, I would say that it's not necessarily for the entirety of the 45-day early voting period. The way that the legislation was written was that it would require one location and leave the flexibility up to the locality to decide. The way that I envisioned it was allowing for at least one early Saturday of voting for students to be able to vote on a Saturday on their campuses.
Okay, and if I could do a follow-up question, did not know a lot of the. I'm sorry?
Delegate Waxman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of the college campuses I've been on to, as I think it was previously stated, parking is very restricted. And I believe there's also a concern about security from the college standpoint, too. I didn't know if you'd gotten any input from colleges, if how this influx of outside people onto their campus might be a security concern.
Sure. Madam Chair, I would say that I think that security at polling locations is always a concern. And so certainly I think that would probably be the same for a college campus, but I imagine that a college campus would work with their locality, whether that's a city or the county, to figure out the right provisions for it. I've seen lots of creative solutions around polling locations and other venues, whether it's for medical centers, that I think they could, I trust folks to get creative in order to meet the need of students being able to cast ballots early and build a pathway for them to participate.
Are there any further questions from the subcommittee?
Madam Chair,
Delegate Sickles.
I'd like to ask the patron, isn't it true that a registrar could open a satellite location in a university situation right now, under current law? You're just changing it to say they have to. That's
correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? All right. With that being, Delegate Green.
Brought up another thought that just crossed my mind. If they can open a voting location, would a member of the registrar, or would the registrar or assistant registrar have to be there during this time? And how would the staffing be university staff, or would it be the registrar would be there?
Madam Chair, I would say that I think that the registrar or the deputy registrar would not have to be present. I think that it would work like any other voting location. And so they could, and there would be no requirement for university staff to have to staff the location, because again, this would be a locality in a local registrar's office administering the election site.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Yes, please.
In the audience. Okay. All right. So what we'll do is, I'm just trying to see how you stack up. We're going to give 5 minutes for those for, 5 minutes against, and then we'll go to the online. You have a couple.
Okay. Oh, so 5 minutes for.
You don't have 5 minutes. Everybody
has 5. I'm skipping through some stuff. My name is Will Winters. I'm the state director with NextGen here in Virginia, largest youth voter organization in the country. There's a couple points here that I want to really highlight as why this bill is really important. First off, election administration. We saw some localities this year with the influx of same-day voter registrations that really kind of it was a lot for localities to deal with. So expanding that time, adding more time allows localities with colleges, and then especially rural ones, to be able to go through those a little bit faster and not just make their hardest day of the year even harder. Transportation's already been talked about, but just schedule. Not every school has election day off, so students have finals, classes, and when you compound that with issues like transportation, I was on college campuses on election day. We dealt with a lot of students that honestly, really, we're dealing with issues for the first time of like, oh, well, I applied for absentee, but I didn't get it. Can we get this today? No. You're like, you need a, like, that's a problem you should have dealt with earlier. So some information issues about like what they need to vote and where they can vote. And yeah, if you have all these little issues like information, transportation, visibility, all these little things about not being able to go early, it can all impair somebody voting. It only takes a little to get somebody to go vote. So this bill helps really just kind of deal with across the board issues that could prevent somebody from voting. So that's why we support this bill. And yeah.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Ty Mallory, representing the Virginia NAACP. In NAACP, we have several college chapters, several hundred members across Virginia. We strongly support the bill. What it also shows, too, is that when young people vote young and they start voting early, they are proven to be lifelong voters. So we want to make sure we establish that practice and make voting accessible to as many of our young people as possible. And thank you.
Is there anyone online that would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Yes, please. Hi, my name is Michelle Cantor-Cohen. I am the video. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Michelle Cantor-Cohen. I'm here on behalf of Fair Election Center and our Campus Vote project. This bill would help eliminate barriers to voting for students. We are a national 501c3 voting rights organization, and our Campus Vote project works to educate and engage young voters on voting rights issues and institutionalized civic engagement at university and college campuses, including in Virginia. Campus polling places during early voting offer students the same opportunity to vote in their community as other voters. Travel to off-campus voting sites is difficult for many on-campus students, and it's made worse by prohibitions on having vehicles at school due to parking constraints. For example, freshmen at UVA, VCU, Norfolk State, and a number of other universities that would be included in this bill are not permitted to have cars on campus. So that would particularly help those students. We've heard from students as well that on-campus polling sites would help them vote as compared with having to get to an on-campus site, an off-campus site, sorry. So we strongly support this bill. And we also would suggest that the bill be actually expanded to include two-year institutions, public institutions with the same enrollment, to increase access for the many Virginians who attend community colleges in the Commonwealth. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Mr. Donald Garrett, are you online?
I'm online. So just really briefly, these are personal remarks given just on behalf of me and not Fairfax County or anyone, but just really quickly, for the past 12 years, I've been either an assistant chief election officer or a chief election officer at the University Precinct at George Mason University in Fairfax County. And the two biggest customer service complaints we have from turning voters away, the first one was registration issues, but the General Assembly has already addressed that with same-day registration. And number two is there's always been a misconception or belief that the school, being a university, it offers a sort of regional voting opportunity and ability. That's currently not the law. And so HB 941 is a step in the right direction to really give the voters what they're asking for. And I know our college is going to handle it. In 2021, our universities, they transform the athletic centers, student centers to places where people from the community could get vaccinations and things like that. And so I really feel that the universities are able to offer those services like they were able to do during the 2021 onward pandemic. They can also mobilize for democracy. So I really hope the subcommittee can report this bill favorably.
Gratitude. Mr. Blazin Bloom.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Blazin Buckshot Bloom. I'm a student at O'Domini University in my senior year and a commuter from Chesapeake. However, this past semester, I was an intern with our university when it came to voter engagement and registration, and I want to speak to that experience as to the necessity of this bill in making college campuses more inclusive and accessible when it comes to voting. The first part is a lot of students, when they come to university, they're not from the area. And oftentimes they're first-time new voters. And so providing a place on campus that is familiar for students as opposed to a site off campus that is often hard to reach as well as unfamiliar, students may not be aware of the best ways to get there. having that opportunity for them to vote on campus makes it that much easier for them to be comfortable going out and voting and being a part of their new community. But furthermore, given the difficulties it is with being a college student, having to balance full-time work oftentimes with being a full-time student and trying to have a social life, providing just that opportunity to be able to incorporate voting more easily into a student's day-to-day schedule, to build around it by having it located on a campus where all their other activities typically are, makes it that much easier, again, for students to be able to participate in the electoral process and to also set the foundation for being stewards of our democracy and being active and engaged voters, not just while they're in college, but long after they graduate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So for the next few witnesses, we ask that you just state your name and whether you support, and that you have, if you're with an organization, and that you support the bill. Mr. Nicholas Smith, if you're online.
Yes, thanks. I'm speaking in my personal capacity, but as an election administrator, I do support the bill. There is some language cleanup that I think could be done versus, because there's singular usage with about 3,000 people. Does that apply to the campus or the institution as enrollees? And what happens for localities that are have multiple campuses across multiple jurisdictions, since it would be the locality providing the ballots, and they would presumably only have ballots for their locality. So just ensuring that that was sort of cleared up, but I strongly support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Dominic Harden.
Hey, my name is Dominic Harden. I'm here speaking today on behalf of myself as a youth election organizer based out of Roanoke, Virginia, and I strongly support HB 941.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. That's it. Yep. Is there anyone in the space that wants to oppose the bill? All right, you all have 5 minutes collectively.
Good afternoon. I'm Melody Clark. I'm with Virginia Action. I'm also a Virginia resident and a grandmother in Virginia, and I cherish the right to vote. And I do want to say I have also been an officer of election, volunteered in elections. It is a lot of work. It takes a lot of manpower, and it costs a lot of money, especially in light of our 45 days of early voting. This is going to add a tremendous amount, not only of monetary impact on our registrar's offices, but a physical impact in the amount of time and locations that you're talking about and manpower across the state. It's a huge burden for them, and I'm not sure that folks are really taking that into consideration, especially in light of the fact that folks can vote by mail. They can vote absentee. They don't need to actually be there in person, which is what a lot of folks do. They do vote by mail. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just ask the witness?
Delegate Sickles.
Yeah, no jurisdiction that has satellite voting keeps satellite voting open for 45 days. The registrar's office has to be open 45 days out. The military ballot has to be prepared to send overseas 45 days out. But no jurisdiction I'm aware of has satellite voting for the entire 45 days. Maybe you could tell us the one that you know that has.
She hasn't. This bill has left it open to interpretation. They haven't put a limit on it.
Madam Chair, under current law, it's open for the registrars to decide now how they do it. So that would not be a change. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy Smith. I'm with Middle Resolution PAC, and I believe this bill needs continued consideration by this committee. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of 18 to 20-year-olds in the state of Virginia who are not attending our universities. They are not being provided special assistance, special attention in order to cast their vote as they should, like any other student who is attending college on one of our campuses. In fact, those students may have less flexibility than a student. Most of you, I'm sure all of you, like I went to college, there is more flexibility during the day. Typically during a work day, an individual is in their workplace for 8, 10 or more hours, depending on their shift and the job that they're doing, or if they're a young 18-year-old beginning a business and have actually much less flexibility. Students are not typically in class for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. They have extended breaks between. So I think it's really unfair to the other 18 to 22, 24-year-olds out there who also need to be considered if we're looking at a special population of individuals. I think the other thing that should be considered is that college campuses, by and large, have numerous clubs, organizations that are dedicated to educating those individuals, making sure that they get text reminders to vote, to register them, to make sure they have campaign and candidate information. That is not being provided to our 18 to 22-year-olds who are living out in the world in Virginia, perhaps working in an organization or working in a field where there's not a lot of emphasis on voting. So I urge you to continue to consider this and look at the thousands of students, probably more students who are not working or not attending a college, and that they're getting the same treatment across the state of Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to let the other witnesses know we got about 2 minutes on the in-person clock, collectively.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Katie Boyle with the Virginia Association of Counties. Certainly not in opposition to the intent here. We would just say, you know, the state has not really sent down ongoing support for early voting. We're very appreciative of the ARPA funds that were sent down. Those are temporary, however, and when they run out, this will return to being a local responsibility. And so traditionally, there's been local discretion about setting up satellite offices in recognition that the localities are funding this. So if it's the policy goal of the General Assembly to move this bill forward, we would really love to discuss perhaps some grant funding or some other assistance to localities to make it work. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Josette Bolivar with the Virginia Municipal League. We do have some concerns over this legislation, particularly around staffing, new equipment costs, and it is an unfunded mandate. So thank you.
All right, we have a couple folks online. Ms. Shelley Oberlander.
Thank you, Chairman Glass. I am an electoral board member from Loudoun County, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but I'm very aware of the process here in the elections. And so I oppose this bill. I feel like it's discriminatory. It doesn't provide equal access to all college students in Virginia. As the summary says, it provides it for certain public institutions. It doesn't provide it for private institutions, nor any institution less than 3,000 students. So I don't think it's providing equal access. And so I oppose it for that reason. As well, I'm concerned about security reasons. We would have to, I know the election office often changes locks and such for the security of the equipment of the satellite locations, and I think there could be problems with that, as well as the jurisdiction. Is it the local police that would have the jurisdiction or campus police? And then lastly, I think it provides confusion because of so many students being registered out of state as well as in other parts of the county. That's a confusion for elect as well as the GRs, the general registrars. And then it puts an extra layer of bureaucracy because if you look at Section G, and I think the legislators should look at Section G, it gives a lot of authority to some of the higher levels of education institutions, some of the bureaucracy there, but which puts it between the general registrars and the local electoral boards who are supposed to be conducting the elections. So I ask you to please oppose Bill 941. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Isles, if you guys can make your comments brief.
Hi, good afternoon, Chairman Glass and delegates. My name is Stephanie Isles. I'm the Director of Elections, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Voter Registrars Association of Virginia. We have some concerns with regards to this bill, although we feel the intent from the delegate is well pursed. We always want to encourage our voters to express their constitutional right to vote, including our college students, and we work very hard with our institutions in our area. One of the concerns we have is with regards to security, not only of the equipment, but of the students and the staff on campus. This would be allowing other people to come on campus. And with what's been going on in the world lately, we are concerned with the safety and security of the students. We also need to ensure that our equipment is safe. We have to have secured internet access during early voting to ensure that a person is not able to vote in more than one location. Parking is a concern. There's barely parking for students sometimes on campus, much less people coming from the outside who are not students. And we have to offer curbside voting, which is not available at most student centers, which are located in the center of campus. This could possibly interfere with other campus events when a special election is called. in the event of a vacancy in office. It would, in fact, require a deputy registrar be present at those locations. So we would have to hire additional staffing, which is an unfunded mandate, along with additional equipment, programming, split localities. Someone else did mention with regards to larger institutions such as UVA. There's UVA, there's UVA-Wise, and there's also a branch out in Virginia Beach for campus. So would it cover all of those locations? It does not provide equity. And just keep in mind, a lot of college students are not registered to vote at their campus address. They are registered to vote from back home, and they choose to vote an absentee ballot. So we work very hard with our colleges. We work with Norfolk State University and Old Dominion University in Norfolk. We actually talked with Norfolk State about putting a polling place on their campus at one time. And after some review, we did not hear back from them. We used to have a polling place on Old Dominion University, as the delegate did mention, and they asked us to leave several years ago. We have 2 voter satellite locations that are near our polling places, near our institutions. And Norfolk State, okay, yes, Norfolk State does bus the students to our early voting satellites, and they can take the train to our office. And Old Dominion, we have a voter satellite next door. So we would encourage a study perhaps be done to see what would be the best way to continue to help our college students versus requiring and passing this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Isles. Ned Jones, if you can just state your name and if you're with, who you're with, and whether that you're against the bill.
Sure. My name is Ned Jones. I'm talking on my own, and I am against this bill primarily because college students meet the definition of an absentee voter. They are no longer at their registration or home address, and there are ample opportunities to vote by mail as an absentee, whether from out of state or within Virginia. And so there's no need to have these campus precincts to accommodate just college students. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Delegate Price.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I definitely have heard the passion with which this has been asked for and appreciate the delegate for bringing this forward. But I also have heard some of the concerns, and I would like for the opportunity to get some of the stakeholders at the table together, including school administration, localities, those that would be able to speak to some of the concerns about parking or security, in addition to the students and the stakeholders that would be most benefited from this. And so I would suggest that there could possibly be a motion to carry this over with Rule 22, and that the chair of privileges and elections would be eager to talk about this further. I have that on good authority.
Thank you, Delegate Price. So the committee operates by motion?
So moved. So moved. Second.
Second. All right. Clerk open the rows. Okay, so this is a voice vote motion, so all those in favor say aye. The motion I heard was to continue per Rule 22 to continue to next year. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion passes by a voice vote. All right, we'll go ahead and call up our next bill, House Bill 393. Delegate Griffin.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for having me, Madam Chairwoman. So I've put forward HB 393, and essentially we're looking to achieve a few goals. We want to bring back photo ID. We want to make sure that we have clean voter rolls, and we want to make sure that we have same-day voting. So it's essentially returning back in some ways to a system that has worked for us for a very long time. My background is that I not only was a former prosecutor, but I did election law, both in Virginia, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia. in some major elections. And so I have a very good working knowledge. I've been involved in a lot of lawsuits regarding election law. And so I've submitted some changes that we would like to see, and we'd like for this committee to consider. Page 3, I note some of the photo ID changes. Essentially right now, and the photo ID comes up a few times. I have it on page 3. It comes up on page 10. And essentially what we're doing is we're asking for photo ID, and you'll notice that the fiscal impact statement references this, because if somebody can't afford a photo ID, then the state will they'll fund that and make sure that that person has photo ID. But it also gets, right now we have ID when you vote, but if you don't have ID, you can go in there and you can sign a form saying, I promise I am who I say I am. Or you can bring in some kind of a bill that might have your name on it, or a bank statement that can be easily manipulated. So we get rid of those exceptions and we say, no, you have to go back to having actual photo ID so that we know exactly who you are when you come in to vote. So that's on, I noted some of the pages that's on. As far on page 13, I note that we kind of go away from the no excuse absentee voting and we return to what we had before. And you'll remember that there's a lot of excuses. There was a lot of excuses for why you wouldn't have to vote in person in Virginia prior to that change in the law. If you're in the military, if you're overseas, if you're a student, disabled, awaiting trial, if you're in jail, religion, commuters, sick, disability or sickness, or disability or sickness for a family member. I mean, there's I want to say there's 14 exceptions. If you're scared because you're under a protective order, if you're working on election day, there's tons of excuses that you can vote absentee if you have a reason to vote by absentee. But what this does is it gets rid of the no excuse voting, no excuse absentee, and returns you to election day voting, which we think is really important. And the reason why is because we know that when people vote on election day, we know who they are. They go in to their local precinct, they see the person that's in their neighborhood, the workers at their local precinct are the people in the neighborhood, and they vote there in person. There's a lot less of an opportunity for fraud, like you see the large opportunities through large-scale absentee voting. The other thing we really do is if you're going to move away from that the large-scale absentee voting, this bill gets rid of the permanent absentee list, because the permanent absentee list I think has been proven. It's been a concern by many across the United States, because what this bill does is it says, I ask on this one occasion to get my absentee ballot. You send it to me this time, and after that election, you have to request it again. And that's a change from what the current law is, where the current law says, here's I'm asking for an absentee ballot in perpetuity for the rest of my life. And the problem with that is that when there's a permanent absentee list in perpetuity, people forget, people move, but the ballots never stop coming, right? They're constantly sent out. We had somebody just testify in the last bill saying that college students, what did they said that they said they requested an absentee ballot, but they never received the absentee ballot, right? So they showed up and now they're asking for a second ballot. And this bill gets rid of that. Another thing that I'll note that this bill does is it eliminates drop boxes. Drop boxes are obviously a major concern of many Virginians. It's a concern of the majority of the constituents in my district. And so, again, we get away from drop boxes and we go to in-person voting. It also gets rid of the CAP, which is the Central Absentee Processing Centers that are such a concern. I have worked the CAP in Fairfax County, which is, as many of you know, if you're from Northern Virginia, 1 in 7 voters will vote in Fairfax County, and most of them will vote absentee. And so when you're in there on election night, you're talking about tens of thousands of ballots that are flowing through there, and it's almost impossible to track where these ballots are coming from. So and they have a huge processing center, and it's very difficult to watch what's going on. It's very difficult to know where the ballots are coming from, track where they're coming from, which opens up the opportunity to fraud. And I would, again, contrast that with the localities when you've got 100 ballots in one precinct. It's much easier to process. There's many more wonderful changes that I think will be positive for Virginia law, but I will stop there to make good use of your time, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Delegate Griffith. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question. So in your statement, a lot of the things that you were stating, is that all alleged, or is that cases that has happened dealing with Department of Elections and you've seen some type of voter fraud, or they've seen some type of voter fraud?
Well, there's very little law enforcement dedicated to this. There's no eyes on it. It's an unknowable question, right? I mean, how would I know? These are reforms that are being put into election codes across the country to prevent it, right? It's prophylactic. You want to make sure that it doesn't happen, and that's why you have these kinds of changes taking place.
Madam Chair, follow-up.
Delegate Henson.
So as it relates to Department of Elections and local registrars' offices, are they not doing their due diligence and making sure they're properly making, basically, if you're going to vote early, that the voter is saying who they say they are before accepting their ballot?
Well, I think, unfortunately, what Virginia has done is it has put down these mandates for local registrars where they have to obey what the General Assembly has told it. And the current policy is a policy that was constructed to deal with a time of crisis, which was the COVID-19 epidemic. And we are no longer in that epidemic now. And so I think that the focus needs to be back on good, sound election policy where we actually know what's happening with the ballots.
Just a comment, Madam Chair, at the appropriate time.
One moment, and we'll get Delegate Srinivasan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a quick clarifying question for the delegate. You had made a comment about people not bringing the right ID, right? So let's say that if I walked in with a utility bill or something, I forgot my ID, they take me as a provisional vote. I still have to bring back the right paperwork for the vote to be counted. Just because I walked in with the utility bill and they took my my ballot and they took my ballot, they won't count it until I cure it. I come back and show the real ID. So I just want to clarify that because that does not alone make that a valid ballot. I have to come back. So thank you.
Delegate, every day when you come into this building, you're required to show a photo ID.
Delegate, I asked you to.
Excuse me, Madam Chairwoman. Every single delegate, every single person that works in this building is required to come in here and show their photo ID. And the idea that we wouldn't show one for voting, the most sacred of our rights, I think is a problem.
Are there any other questions from the subcommittee? So I'll defer back to Delegate Henson for your comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the delegate, Srinivasan, already touched on the topic, so I'll let it go.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the bill? And again, I'm going to rhyme. We have about 5 minutes worth of testimony.
Yep, I'm going to be about 15 seconds. So I am in favor of the bill, even though I know that it is a large omnibus bill and has a lot of moving parts to it. But I do want to clarify, I'm not a legislator, but I do want to clarify Delegate Srinivasan's comment. So if you go in to vote and you do not have an ID with you, you are allowed to sign a statement of affirmation and cast a ballot. It is not a provisional ballot. It is not put aside for later counting. It is a ballot that is cast. Okay, so in effect in Virginia, and I think if we're really honest, there is no ID required in Virginia of any sort, of any type, in order to cast a ballot. The unfortunate part of that, should someone do something that is unfortunate and go in and vote your name, once you show up with a valid ID as the person who has that ID, you cannot cast a ballot. That ballot cannot be pulled back. It cannot be retracted. It is cast by someone who does not have to provide anything, no social security number, no birth date, no information. That individual is long gone, and your vote is lost to you. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Melody Clark with Virginia Action. And we can right now even go to the Department of Elections website, and they will walk you through how to get a Virginia voter photo ID, which are available now free of charge from any general registrar's office. That was put into law some time ago. So this is actually already available. So there's absolutely no cost to the individual to get that ID. We do support HB 44. Thank you.
Is there anyone online in favor of the bill? Ms. Ann Gregorian.
Yes, I'm in favor of this bill. The trade-off for casting a secret ballot must be transparency and guardrails. And Madam Chair, I have personally been out canvassing. I've been in the polls. I've been a poll watcher. In Newport News, I did encounter a gentleman, an elderly gentleman for curbside voting, who absolutely didn't understand why he had to cast a provisional vote. He came early to vote. but I told him he didn't come early enough because somebody had already taken his vote. I like to include that nobody encouraged him to sign a complaint. I did. Hopefully the Department of Elections looked at that complaint and answered that elderly gentleman as to why his vote had been cast. So I agree with this bill in that if we want to have secret ballot, we must have transparency of posting of who is voting, who has voted, and we must also have guardrails. So I know that the majority of people on here probably don't support this bill. I don't understand why. It has a real effect on the voters in the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is anyone in the room who wants to speak in opposition to the bill?
I'm speaking for the bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris DeRosa. I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League urges you to vote no on HB 393, a bill that not only steps backward from recent election reforms that make it easier to vote, but also introduces novel requirements that are burdensome to election officers and could lead to voter harassment and intimidation. Virginia voters would lose the advantages of same-day voter registration and no excuse early voting, which would be curtailed. No drop boxes would be allowed. Photo IDs would be required. Brand new burdens would be placed on election officials for no real purpose other than to expose online any gift of goods or services the registrar's office may have received, even though such gifts are prohibited. Another burden would require election officials to post a list monthly of people who have been registered or removed from the voter rolls and those who voted in the most recent election. This would lead to voters feeling intimidated, threatened. They would be upset and angry, and you will hear from them. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Tram Nguyen with New Virginia Majority. We strongly oppose this bill. We've worked many, many years to get all of these reforms passed in 2020 and 2021. Virginia moved from being 49th in the country, second to last in the country for ease to access to voting, and now we are 11th, and I feel that that is something that we ought to be proud of. So we urge you to oppose this bill. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Liz White. I'm the Executive Director of Upvote Virginia. We also oppose this bill, particularly the repeal of the existing ranked choice voting local option pilot program. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jay Deck with the Virginia Education Association. For all the reasons that have been said, especially all the progress that we've made toward voting to get more people to vote, it would be a shame to roll it backwards. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. We have Ms. Gayleen Knoyton online if you're there.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Gayleen Knoyton. I'm the Political Action Chair for the Virginia NAACP, and we strongly oppose this bill. We have worked very hard to expand access for voters, and this bill will roll back everything that we have worked hard for. So we strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Are there any further comments from the subcommittee?
Madam Chair.
Delegate Maldonado.
I have a motion at the appropriate moment.
Delegate Maldonado.
I make a motion that we lay it on the table, lay the bill on the table.
Second.
All right, the motion has been made and properly second that we lay House Bill 393 on the table. Will the clerk open the rolls? The clerk close the rolls. All right, the bill is tabled by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, next on the docket, we have House Bill 433. Delegate Arnold.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, House Bill 433 seeks to amend Virginia Code Section 24.2-304.05 by delineating the numbering sequence for districts upon redistricting. What it calls for is it calls for in the House that the numbers of the districts would start in the westernmost district with 1 and proceed counterclockwise in sequential order. and then it does the opposite for the Senate. That's what the bill does. It would be in effect in 2030 upon redistricting.
Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Sickles?
Could you tell us the reason for this? I mean, this would cost a little money. I'm not saying that we should not do it this way, but did the special masters get it wrong?
No, well, I have no comment on the special masters. I would say there is no fiscal impact that was reported to me upon the drafting of the legislation. What I experienced in my campaign and in speaking with my constituents and what I encountered throughout my conversations was nobody could really explain to me exactly how the numbering of the districts occurred. It seemed to be somewhat without order. For example, under the current composition, I'm House District 46. That used to be a Northern Virginia district. I split a county with Delegate Ballard, and he is District 42. This is just an attempt to impose some sort of order on it. It doesn't affect the composition of the districts. It has no impact on that. It just says after you get the map and you start numbering your districts, start here, proceed this way.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles?
Well, for one thing, they did start in Arlington. That, the other side of the river is that city.
Right.
And that with number 1, number 2, number 3, and they, all those low numbers. I don't know why they started on the eastern side, but they're not crazy on our side of the state. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right in there.
Madam Chair, I'd answer the delegate by saying I understand his point, and I'm not trying to pick one side over the other. I just thought there may be, moving forward, you may have a different group of special masters that may have different positions on that and just try to provide some structure or baseline for how to proceed.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles.
Thank you. I think all of us have been around here a while, have a pile of stationery we're throwing out now. I've got new cards that say 17. I guess I should just keep all the old cards and take a pen and strike out 43, but then, and then use those. But those are costly to make all those changes.
Madam Chair, I would answer the delegate by saying I agree that it is a costly change.
I imagine you would. Delegate Bloxham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this actually wouldn't take effect until the next census.
Madam Chair, I would answer the delegate by saying that's my understanding, yes.
All right, and I would be number 100 no matter what. So.
Madam Chair, I have no answer for the delegate on that.
All right. Are there any further questions from the subcommittee? All right. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak in favor of the bill? Is there any in the room that would like to speak in opposition to this bill? Do we have any? All right. Well, then the committee moves by. All right. Delegate Maldonado.
Madam Chair, I recommend that we move to lay the bill on the table.
All right.
Second.
Gently.
Yes.
The motion has been made to gently lay House Bill 433 and properly second on the table. Will the clerk open the rolls for the member can record their votes on the electronic voting board? Will the clerk close the rolls? And the bill will be gently laid on the table by a vote of 5-3. Thank you for your willingness to try to get us organized around here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank the committee.
All right, next bill we'll call up is House Bill 750. Delegate Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Before us is HB 750. This will simply allow candidates the option of collecting petition signatures by electronic means. Requires that the State Board of Elections to provide a formal guidelines for this process. Because there's a budget amendment adopted, this process was used back in the Commonwealth during the period of COVID with no reported issues to the way the petition signatures process was conducted. Under this bill, the process for collecting petition signatures would not change other than the addition of a digital option. The only other requirement would be that the signer of the digital petition would have to provide the last 4 digits of their Social Security number, which is not a requirement on the physical form that we currently have. This is to add an extra layer of verification and security without having a petition circulator present. With this bill, I hope that Virginia will join other states in giving candidates more options to collect these necessary petitions. If I recall, Arizona, Colorado, the District of Washington already are using this process. And that is the bill before you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Delegate Walker. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Is there anyone willing to speak in favor of the bill?
Yes, hello. The League of Women Voters supports HB 750. In today's world, where all kinds of banking transactions and contracts, even for the purchase and sale of real property, can be executed and ratified electronically, there's no reason why candidate petitions cannot be handled the same way, as long as there are appropriate safeguards in place. This bill provides for proper safeguards and brings into the 21st century the process for getting candidates on the ballot. Thank you.
Delia Srivastava.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate, what was the process during COVID? So you said that this process was in place, digital, during COVID. How did it work?
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Go ahead, Delegate Walker.
No problem. Yes, so this process was used during COVID when, pretty much everything was shut down. And so since this has been used before, then all we're asking that this process be available to be used again in the future for any candidate that's running, or if there's a referendum, say in a locality that you're trying to collect signatures for, this would also work as well.
Madam Chair, can I have a follow-up question? Delegate, my concern is the security. I understand digitization, we all use it, but we are talking about, voters, registered voters. Putting in 4 last social security number doesn't mean I'm a registered voter. So what kind of checks and balances would the system have?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, if I may.
Delegate Walker.
So what this bill is stating here, that currently when you do a paper petition, you're circulating those on there, you have your name, your address, the date of the petition, and then you have an option for your Social Security, the last 4 numbers. With electronic, you would be required to put the last 4 numbers over your Social Security so that the registrar could verify that when they're checking to make sure this is a legitimate individual signing this petition here. That would be the security with electronic one here.
Delegate Maldonado.
My question was asked. Thank you. I was trying to turn off my light and it wouldn't go off.
Delegate Bloxham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We got a question, I guess, if elect is in here, because I don't remember doing it electronically, and I know that Veris is getting ready to change everything in the next year, so I want to make sure this doesn't do a unduly burden elect. I'm just not familiar with the process before.
I believe we have Commissioner Beal.
Madam Chair, Delegate Bloxham, you're correct. That is our priority, is the new system right now. I think I was not there when we did this through the pandemic. I think some of you probably have better experience than I do. I have heard that it almost brought down comment when we tried to do it this way before, so it would be a technical lift for us. We haven't put in our fist yet exactly what we think it is, but it would require some development on our side.
Go ahead, Delegate Bloxham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, and your project to get the new system up and running is, what, a year out? Is that what we're talking about?
We're looking to go live spring, summer 25.
Okay, thank you.
Delia Sickles.
Madam Chair, could you remind me how Veris is connected to taking a petition, electronic petition? I think I know most of what.
Madam Chair, Delegate Sickles, it would go through COMET, which is more of our campaign finance application. It would not go through Veris.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles.
Are there many vendors for this product, or would it be something you'd compete for?
That's something that we said in our FIS is that we'd have to go out and look for a software development company or perhaps produce it in-house.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to this bill? Any further questions from the subcommittee? Not the committee.
Madam Chair,
Delegate Sickles.
as much as I'd like to be 21st century, on top of everything, and be, I'm not, and I think this needs a little work, so I would move that we gently lay the bill on the table.
The motion has been made to gently lay the bill on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. So House Bill HB 433. If the clerk will, excuse me, sorry. 750 is before us. If the clerk will open the roll so members can record their vote on the electronic voting board. Clerk, close the rolls. All right, and the bill has been gently labeled on the table by a vote of 7-1. Thank you so much, Delegate Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Chairman and Delegate Sickles.
Next, we have up HB 658. Delegate Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I do believe there's a amendment in the form of a substitute.
Is that? Do we have that right?
Madam Chair, it should be available on LIS, hopefully momentarily.
What we'll do is we're going to take this by temporarily just to give us a chance to look at the substitute. If you can stand by, Delegate Cole.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate you. If we can have House Bill 79, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Committee. House Bill 79 is before you that would amend and remove language from the Code of Virginia relating to special elections. This legislation was sent to me by the City of Stanton as one of their legislative priorities, where they'd like to be able to have the ability to hold special elections on the same day as a primary election. For small localities, this would be a great cost-saving measure, and also streamlining the process of the election by allowing the special and the primary to occur at the same time. This bill doesn't have any fiscal impact to the Commonwealth, and it would save our small localities a lot of money if we were able to move this forward. So with that, I would kindly ask the committee to consider moving this forward favorably.
Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who wish to speak in favor of the bill? Delegate has the floor.
Delegate, can you please explain when you say the special election same day as the primary election date? I'm sorry, can you please?
Madam Chair, yes, so special elections on the same day that there might be a primary election as well.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you would have primary and general on the same day?
Madam Chair, so that's what the locality is asking, and they're asking just for the ability. This would not be a mandate that any other locality would have to do that. It would just take out the restrictive language that we currently have now that says it cannot happen. So for your smaller areas, when you have a general election, a primary, and you have a special election, all these things, it's really very expensive for them to have all these different elections. They're asking for the flexibility just to be able to have that option to do it on one day.
Okay, I believe you have one more person behind you ready to speak in favor, sir.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Mark Flynn on behalf of the Virginia Municipal League, and we have a concern with the bill. For years, the primary election should just be for that party or one party or the other.
Are you speaking in favor or?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have concerns with the bill. So for years, the law has been that only the purely political, the party's primary should be on primary day. That's sort of been the general principle. Appreciate very much the attempt to make it less expensive for localities to administer a special election. In fact, some years ago when this law got changed, I was one of the ones that convinced the General Assembly to let the localities choose the general election day to save not having to drag the equipment out again. Well, here you have that savings. However, the issue is that if only one party is holding a special election, then if it's a Republican's primary, then the Republicans are going to come vote. If it's a Democratic primary, the Democrats are going to come to vote. And in general, the Municipal League has tried to, as much as possible, and I know sometimes more an ideal than a practice, have local elections be non-political, to be people who are just interested specifically in the locality. That's the concern. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Is there any, Mr. John Blair, are you online to speak in favor of the bill?
Yes, Chair Glass.
You have the floor, Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Chair Glass and members of the committee. This bill, I'm the Stanton City Attorney. My name is John Blair. And the reason that we've asked for the committee's consideration of this bill is that in January of last year, we had a city council member resign. Also, just to let you know, City of Charlottesville also had a city council member resign. In Stanton, our council looked at the cost of a special election, which was $19,000 just for us to have a special election for the council seat. Given that there was a primary election, the state law said we couldn't hold it on the same day when the election machinery would already be in use and the poll workers would be out. So our council, and I know the Charlottesville City Council made a similar decision. They held the special election in November during the general election. Well, that, as you can imagine, that's 11 months in which the voters did not have an opportunity to have a say on who was the counselor for those particular seats. We feel like this bill on a primary election day, it saves the localities money. It allows voters to have an opportunity to have a say instead of an 11-month gap. And also that, if we had held a special election, one of the things our council considered was sometimes the turnout's 2 or 3% when you have a special election on a July Tuesday or an August Tuesday, whereas a primary, you may have more participation from voters. And that's the reason we're asking for your support of this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blair. Is there anyone in the room willing to speak and needing to speak in opposition?
Hello again. The League of Women Voters opposes HB 79. If special elections are held the same day as a primary election for only one political party, voters from that party, the one that is holding the primary, are more likely to turn out the vote, which could significantly skew the results of the special election. No party should have an unfair advantage over another.
Right, any other questions from the subcommittee?
Madam Chair. Sorry, my speaker button is not working. I just have a question. So from the administrative perspective, if there is a primary happening, Republican Democratic primary, will the special election appear on both of those ballots? Or how, if you know, or if somebody in the audience can tell us, how would that administrative piece look come election day?
Madam Chair?
Delia?
I would like to defer to an expert, to counsel on that.
Madam Chair, I would think that there would have to be a variety of ballot styles actually created. You'd have to have one that would have the Republican primary and also the special election office on. You'd need to have one for the Democratic primary. And then the special election office, you'd probably want to have a ballot style that had just the special election, so someone didn't have to vote in the primary if they didn't want to. Depending on what the special election was for, there might be issues with people who might be qualified to vote in the primary but not necessarily eligible to vote for that special election. I think it would really just depend on the circumstances of the particular locality and the elections.
Thank you, Council. Right, so online we have Ms. Galen Knoyton speaking in opposition to the bill.
Yes, Galen Knoyton with the Virginia NAACP. We strongly oppose this bill. This only is going to add to confusion to voting. This is a part of primaries, a partisan election, as it was stated. I know here in Hampton, whenever we have a special election, is moved to November, and the council will take in applications and interview candidates to fill that seat until the special election. So we don't want to have confusion happening during the primaries. Thank you so much.
Okay, I recognize you all's request to speak buttons are working. Are there any further questions? Yeah. Any other questions from the subcommittee?
Madam Chair.
Delegate Maldonado.
At the appropriate time, I have a motion.
You have the floor.
Madam Chair, I recommend that we lay HB 79 gently on the table.
Second.
Second.
All right, the motion has been made and properly second to lay HB 79 on the table. Will the clerk open the roll so the members can record their vote on the electronic voting board? Clerk, close the roll. All right, the bill has been gently laid on the table by a vote of 8-0. Thank you so much, Delegate.
Madam Chair, thank you, committee.
All right, we're going to bring back up House Bill 658. Delegate Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. And we have the substitute.
Madam Chair, that should be available on LIS and IHOT at this point.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move the substitute?
Move the substitute. Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, the substitute has been moved. Delegate Cole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the substitute is properly before us, this bill would allow a political party to use ranked choice voting in any state-run primary election for legislative, statewide, federal, and General Assembly races. And as we've looked at this, we would notice that the bill specifically states that ranked choice voting would not apply in races with only 2 candidates. In crowded primary fields, which we're currently seeing right now with some of our congressional districts, ranked choice voting prevents someone from securing the party's nomination with only a plurality of the votes. And ranked choice elections require the winner to have support from a majority of voters. And this would determine each candidate has the broadest appeal, which sets up a strong nominee for the general election. And as we've taken a look at this bill, we have seen this implemented so far throughout the state, and this has bipartisan support. We looked in 2021, Virginia Republicans used ranked choice voting to nominate their 3 statewide candidates, all of whom won in the general election. Governor Youngkin, Lieutenant Governor Sears, Attorney General Mayeres were all nominated using ranked choice voting. And in 2020, the Democratic-led General Assembly overwhelmingly passed HB 1103, which gives localities the option to use ranked choice voting for certain local governing bodies. And we saw this happen out in 2023. The Arlington County Board of Supervisors voted to permanently adopt ranked choice voting for its primary elections after successfully using ranked choice voting in its June 2023 election. So this bill would just extend ranked choice voting in primaries for General Assembly races, statewide, and federal elections. And I would ask it to be the privilege of this subcommittee to pass it on.
Any questions from the subcommittee?
Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles.
Just want to ask the patron. So if you wanted to do it statewide, the state party would be the decision maker on whether they want to use or not, because this is like totally optional.
I would say to the chair, that is correct. This is an optional choice, just allowing parties to choose this as an option.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles.
So as this is not available now, you just mentioned that the Republicans did it, but they did it in a private setting. They didn't do it with at the polling place with our registrars.
That is correct. It was in their convention when they did these. So this would take it to the statewide to allow them to choose to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Bloxham.
All right, so that brings up a second question then. The cost, and this would be run by the state, and there again, can our old Vera system do this? And I guess that would be phone a friend for.
Well, I actually have a point to that, Madam Chair. This bill does not have a time frame of when it will be enacted. We just vote on the bill, let it pass, and then the option would be there. And so when the new system is finished in 2025, I believe, it could be an option that can be utilized.
Delegate Bloxham.
Follow-up question. So this doesn't have a reenactment clause on it or anything that says when it's enacted. The way I'm reading it, it becomes active if we vote on it July 1.
Give me one
and
second.
that would require elect to do it, if I'm not mistaken.
I apologize. I recant my statement. That is correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions from the subcommittee?
Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles.
I'm not sure that this is a question for elect or someone else out here, but or the council, I don't think Veris is needed to do a ranked choice vote. I mean, Veris is a voter registration, and it keeps our voter file, our voter list accurate. It's used every day at DMVs now, but I don't think it's used to administer the election per se. Am I wrong about that? It's not used on election day.
Madam Chair, Delegate Sickles, I think there might be a little confusion about it not necessarily being an issue with Veris, but the voting systems that are in place in localities or being used in localities and whether they would be able to do this.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles.
Well, so a locality wouldn't choose to do it unless they had the ability to do it. So they would not impose upon themselves or on the county a ranked choice voting and then not have the machines that can handle the vote.
Madam Chair.
Is that correct? Council?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify for the gentleman's question when he says locality choosing, this would be decided on by the parties.
Thank you, Delegate Price. Any other further questions from the subcommittee?
No, that's a great.
Delegate Sickles.
So you remind me. But my same point is that the party could not decide to use it unless the county was prepared with the equipment to do it. Is it? You don't know that.
That's where I would phone a friend.
Madam Chair, Delegate Sickles. Right now, we have 4 different voting machine vendors in Virginia, so different localities choose a different vendor. There does not currently exist in the world a tabulator that can combine the cast vote records of different vendors. So the reason that Arlington was able to do theirs is because they had the same vendor for the whole county. If you're going to do something like a statewide, it gets very complicated when you're trying to combine cast vote records of vendors. So that's not something that exists.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Madam Chair, again, my name is Liz White. I'm the Executive Director of Upvote Virginia. This bill gives parties a tool to use when it makes sense, to use when it is the appropriate thing for them in a crowded primary field for whichever office is being elected at the time. Upvote Virginia acknowledges absolutely what Commissioner Beals said. The infrastructure and the technology is rapidly catching up in the ranked choice voting realm. It is the fastest growing democracy reform in the country, and the technology is a little behind, but not much. And I think that Delegate Sickles' point is well taken. It would be a poor choice by a party to demand a ranked choice voting in election in a district or a locality where the infrastructure is not ready. The bill also authorizes elect to essentially flip a kill switch and say, nope, that infrastructure does not exist. So I highly encourage you all to consider this bill. It is an excellent tool for parties and a rare reform that is good for parties to choose a strong candidate and also is good for voters to make their preferences known. Thank you so much.
Hello, the League of Women Voters of Virginia does support the expansion of ranked choice voting to all statewide primary elections as described in HB 658 as substituted. We believe that ranked choice voting, or RCV, would make our elections more accessible, would promote nominees with broad support, would ensure that every voter's voice is heard. RCV often results in a more diverse slate of candidates who can run for office without the fear of being a spoiler or splitting the vote. RCV allows voters to express their choice of candidates fully without worrying about wasting their vote if a preferred candidate drops out before Election Day, and without worrying about voting for the likely winner rather than the candidate that most closely represents their personal views. Ranked choice voting ensures that the winning candidate has a broad support of the majority of voters rather than just, say, a 22% or 34% plurality of voters. The League of Women Voters asked this subcommittee to move HB 658 to the full P&E committee. Thank you.
I believe.
Madam Chair, Mike Cantwell, representing Veterans for All Voters. Ranked choice voting is especially important for early voters and military voters who are voting overseas, especially in the Navy on ships. The time delay between requesting a absentee ballot and then submitting your vote and then it actually arriving could be many, many days. And as we see in many primaries, we have candidates who drop out at the race at the last minute. Ranked choice voting helps solve that situation where a absentee voter's vote their preference is recorded, even if their preferred number one candidate drops off the ballot. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have anyone wanting to speak in opposition to the bill?
Yes.
In the audience, we'll get right to you online.
Yep, me again. Nancy Smith with Middle Resolution. I want to dispel a couple of things that I think have become folklore in Virginia politics. In reality, during the convention that was held for the gubernatorial race, lieutenant governor and attorney general race just a couple of years ago in a private convention due to the restrictions from COVID, in actuality and review of the data, our governor, our lieutenant governor, and our attorney general all won on the first ballot. So it is not actually true that ranked choice was a deciding factor in that race. And again, they won on the first ballot. All three of them had over 50%. So I think it's important that at least on the Republican side, people understand that's not actually how it turned out. There is strong lack of support for ranked choice voting. The RNC voted 100-0 to not support ranked choice voting. So all 50 states, which is a rare thing to get 100-0, all 50 states on the Republican National Committee voted against ranked choice voting. So there is a pretty strong belief that ranked choice voting for Republicans and for Republican candidates is not a preferred method. In the Arlington primary, some of the exit polling and later discussion with the candidates, one of our activists had a chance to speak with candidates and look at that. There was concern with the candidates, the results afterwards, in terms of how that process was run, and there were a number of folks in the exit polling who said they were confused, they didn't understand, and they weren't certain that they would want to do that next time. Last comment.
I'm ask you to wrap up your comments.
I am, and I appreciate the time. Last thing is, I think the most important thing about ranked choice voting is that I think everyone who believes in the rights of voters, for everyone to cast a ballot, I think it's very important to understand that the principle of one man, one ballot, one man, woman, individual, one ballot is a principle, excuse me, that we all believe in.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so online we have two, and I'm going to ask. Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Can you
Melody
just state
Clark.
whether you
Yes,
support or against?
I wanted to speak against the bill, and I wanted to address the false claim that it is a majority of voters who elect the candidate, because it is only the ballots that remain in the last
Excuse me,
round.
ma'am. You're in opposition of the bill?
Yes, I thought we had 5 minutes total.
We did. We ran our 5 minutes for opposition bill. If you could state your name and who you're with, and that you're obviously against the bill.
Yes, Melody Clark with Virginia Action, and against the bill, as were all of the Democrat voters in Washington, D.C., who said it disenfranchised the majority of minorities in D.C.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else in opposition to the bill?
Hi, Madam Chair. Martha Cohen. I'm here for myself. And it's true, ranked choice voting is confusing and complicated, and it does disenfranchise voters. It's not a majority of voters in the end of the day. It could be 30%.
Yes, ma'am. You're speaking, you're opposed to the bill?
I'm sorry?
You're in opposition to the bill?
Yes, thank you.
Very, very much. So we have 2 folks in line, if we can. Ms. Ann Gregorian, if you can please limit your comments to who you're with, and if no comments that haven't already been made. Ann Gregorian?
Yes, I can. My name's Ann Gregorian. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not with any organization. And the point I'd like to make is twofold. Number one, hopefully this does just speak to primaries, because in the original bill, I believe it spoke to general elections and all other kinds of elections. And it's not clear to me that we're speaking only to primary elections. So hopefully that's what we are speaking to. And briefly, I would like to say that these ranked choice voting has fractional voting. It's a very complex process that Upvote in their briefings goes to great lengths to train their people that are out talking about ranked choice voting to avoid in their elevator pitch to people that are promoting ranked choice voting, because it's difficult to understand the tabulation. And Elect did a study on ranked choice voting and said it's impossible to follow the law to report fractional voting by precinct. So I'm not sure why we would make a law that requires election results to be reported by precinct and then make an exception for a new system that can't follow our law. And also in a dual primary, I would be curious to know how one party chooses ranked choice voting and the other party does not, and the consumer education that goes along with that. I do have more to say about opposition, but I'll limit it, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gregorian. If Ms. Shelley Uberlander. Yeah,
Thank you, Chairman Glass.
Comments, brief, please.
Yes, I'm an electoral board member from Loudoun County. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Besides ranked choice voting not being fair to voters, as one voter gets one vote and some voters get their second, third, and fourth choices, I think it should be equal to all voters. But 2 very specific concerns I'd like the legislators to look at with this particular bill. Section K, risk limiting audits are not going to be able to be allowed. It's only going to check the first ranking only. So you're never going to be doing an audit of the final vote. Arlington was promised to do a risk limiting audit of their election, and that was never accomplished. I'm not even positive that a recount could occur, because you're not going with the audits would only be able to check the first vote and not the final results. And then Section E, if you look at that, currently election officers in the precinct verify the results, and they send those to the election office, and then the bipartisan election officers transport the ballots to the election office. But Section E has a third-party courier company hired to transport the ballots from the precinct to the election office, and this is very concerning. I think we need to stick with validating the results of the elections in our precincts and having our bipartisan election officers transport those ballots to the election office. So I'm not in favor of this bill and ask the legislators to vote against it. Thank you.
Ms. Uberlander, I just also want to let you know there was a substitute. I think you were speaking to the previous bill. Is there any other questions or comments from the subcommittee? Delegate Cole.
Madam Chair, I would state that hearing some of the concerns, I would be open to putting a delayed enactment clause on the bill until about 2026.
Committee operator.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Sickles.
We carry the bill over under Rule 22.
Okay. All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. The motion has been made and properly second to carry House Bill 658 over per Rule 22. If the clerk can open the rolls, the members. Oh, that's a voice vote. That's a voice vote. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. So Here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of
Thank
the
you so
committee.
much, Delegate Cole.
Thank you.
All right. Next we have House Bill 668. Oh, I thought that was his bill. Wyatt.
Good evening, Madam Chair. House Bill 668. Reason I'm here is a few years ago, Senator Spruill put a bill in to move May elections for like city council, school boards to November. And so I represent the city of Danville, and I see Marcus already smiling. And so my city council did not like that because they vote any year, so they will vote this November. So city council, who normally gets in a May election in a city of of about 20,000 registered voters, might get 10,000 votes total. So the reason the bill's in front of you today is to get, if you look at the language, it says down at 28, it says, notwithstanding any other provision of the law general, a locality may ordinance shift the timing of election of members of the local governing body from an even year to an odd year by extending the existing terms of the local governing body members by 1 year. Such change may only happen after a public hearing and a majority vote of the governing body. So we're not trying to move it back to May. We're just trying to move it to an odd year. So as we all know, this November will be the highest voter turnout as far as the number of people. City council guys, school board, kind of get lost in all that clutter that's going to happen this November. So what the bill does, it gives an option that localities can move it with a public hearing and to move to a odd year.
Any questions from the subcommittee? Delia Bloxham.
So this just moves it, they still have to do it on election day in November?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Not ranked choice voting or anything like that. So.
Any other? All right. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of the bill? We have no one online. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to the bill? You have one.
Sorry.
The League of Women Voters opposes HB 668. While localities may want greater flexibility in managing their elections, this bill provides too much discretion to those officials whose own elections are involved. Not only would elective officials be given the power to shift their own elections to a lower turnout year, but they would also be extending their own terms by a year without public vote. Although the bill requires a public hearing, the governing body would still retain the right to change their own elections.
All right. Looks like online we have Ms. Jeannie Hendwich, if you are there.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jean Hanowich, and I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia. I led two grassroots campaigns, one called Chesapeake, Change the Date Chesapeake, and the other Change the Date Virginia. The legislation that was passed by former Senator Lionel Spruill, SB 1157, had a requirement that if a locality wanted to change the year of their elections, they had a timeline to do so. And there was one locality that did it by the vote of their council, Fredericksburg. My city, where I lived, as soon as Governor Northam signed SB 1157 into law, they immediately decided they wanted to try to shift the elections to the odd years. We had a massive amount of people come to our city council and oppose this, and it failed. The problem I see with this bill is you're only allowing people or cities to move from odd years to even years. You're not allowing them to go from even years to odd years. And we all know that the higher voter turnout is in even years. And that's why we fought so hard for our city to keep the even year elections that we had since 1963, whenever we had elections in Virginia. It was purely a political move to try to reduce turnout
and participation in our local elections, and I strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Galen Canoyton.
Yes, Galen with the Virginia NAACP. We strongly oppose this bill. We were big supporters of Senator Spruill's bill to move the local elections to November, and it has proven to really work. So we oppose this bill.
Any further questions from the, thank you. Any further questions from the subcommittee? Hearing none. Delegate Maldonado.
Madam Chair, I recommend that I move that we lay this bill on the table.
Second.
All right, the motion has been made and properly second to lay House Bill 668 on the table. If the clerk will open the roll so the members can record their vote. Okay. Clerk, close the rolls. All right. All right. The bill has been tabled by a vote of 5-3. Thank you so much, Delegate Marshall.
Thank you for your time.
I know you've been waiting. I'm going to go ahead and call up House Bill 11676. Delegate Wyatt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening. And one more delegate here. This bill before you, 1176 today, is the same bill that passed the House last session in 2023. In my opinion, it is sympathetic to localities that have to staff the registrar's office for 45 days. We know that over 60% of folks vote early, vote the last 2 weeks, hence a 14-day early voting for general elections instead of 7 weeks. It still allows early voting, and yes, by mail, so to vote absentee by mail. It reverts back to pre-2020 where there were 20 options for folks that could vote absentee: students, medical conditions, out of town for work, so folks can still vote absentee. So this bill does require photo ID. This bill also just really covers the cost by locality. Every time I'm in my registrar's office in my localities, they talk about how tough it is to get folks to work all the precincts on election day and to staff the 45 days of early voting. So I know that's a challenge, and the localities that I represent aren't some of the populated localities that would be here in Central Virginia or to my friends further north. So that's what it does. It rolls things back to pre-2020. So it's a simple bill, and I know the hour is late, and I want to be respectful of y'all's time, and I've kind of seen the sentiment of the committee today on a lot of my peers' bills, so it's I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Delegate White. So is there any question from subcommittee?
Speak to the bill.
Delegate Sickles.
You know, one of the things that we don't get a lot of feedback in this job sometimes. But one of the things that I've been thanked for is getting rid of this excuse list. I think we were up to 19 or so. People really like our system better now. Republicans, Democrats, we changed these laws and we lost the election. You won the election. 45 days, the reason we have 45 days is that's what the federal government requires us to have a ballot ready to send to people that are serving overseas. That's why, you know, when in 2020, I'll admit, there were people lined up to vote in a registrar's office. You know, the first day they could vote in 45 days. But generally speaking, people don't do that. And they know in a county that's got any size at all, I don't know how it is that people are coming to vote in Hanover County in a steady stream for 45 days. That doesn't happen in Fairfax. No one votes in a steady stream for 45 days at county headquarters way, way out there, you know, a 30-minute drive through traffic to get there. But they do count on their satellite voting to be there, and it lasts for 2 weeks, has a couple, we required to use the 2 Saturdays. People really like our system now, and I, for one, don't want to go back to where we were. If you lie about people talk about not having the picture ID, and everyone puts their, that I see, I'd have to wait around a long time to find someone who didn't have a driver's license. But if you lie, it's a felony. It is a felony. And people are not going to become a felon to vote in an election. We can't get people who are legal here to go vote in elections half the time. So I do not want to go back to the way we were. That's my speech for the day. And I hope everyone will vote no on this bill, whatever the number is.
Any other questions from the committee? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the bill? And if you can keep your comments brief, we're going to try to roll through the document.
Yes, ma'am. Melody Clark, Virginia Action, and we have done a study of all the weeks of early voting that shows that, just as we might imagine, folks wait until the last minute because we all naturally procrastinate. But the majority of people vote in that last 7 days. 2 weeks is perfectly acceptable. Those last 2 weekends, we wouldn't have any problem with that. But we certainly don't want to be governed by crisis, which is when all of these rules came through during COVID. But if you,
Thank you for keeping a comment short. Anyone else speaking in favor of the bill? Delegate Price.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I think that something that I really want people to hear from me, 2020 happened to be the year that Democrats had the majority and also happened to be the year that we had COVID. These were bills that we had been carrying for years prior to COVID. So these were not COVID measures. They were measures that may have happened around a time that COVID came. And I just really needed to have that distinction be spoken.
Thank you, Alderman Price.
Yep. Nancy Smith, quick comment. I think a lot of people like early voting. I vote early. I think that we are going to find that there is evidence of individuals who will continue to not want to work in elections. It takes thousands, as you know, it takes thousands of officers of election to run it. It takes thousands of volunteers. And I think over time we're going to see a continued degrading of how we are able to staff elections in Virginia as the fatigue factor continues with 45 days, and particularly this year, 3 elections over 45 days. So I think the evidence is going to show itself. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe we have Ms. Oberlander speaking in favor of the bill. If you could keep your comments extremely brief.
Yes, I do support, I know everybody likes early voting. I do too. And also, I don't need to restate, I'm on the Loudoun Electoral Board, but speaking only for myself. But, 45 days is one of the longest in the country. And of the 6 states that have these long voting periods, Virginia is the only one that has an election every single year. So it starts to turn into a perpetual election. I've talked with the general registrars. They all support reducing it some. There's debate 14 days, 21 days, 30 days. But we asked the legislators, you're the only ones that can reduce it. So reduce it something. The GRs are exhausted. And one more little thing, I have another point too, but the immigrants and the elderly, they go vote in September and then they vote again in November. We had 6 that tried to vote again in November because they get confused that they already voted in September. Same thing's going to happen with them voting in January, and then come March 5th, they think they're supposed to vote again. So that's confusing. It's just too long of a period. But one thing I wanted to address especially was the ID requirement. You need a photo ID to go to the doctor, to come to government buildings, to fly a plane or buy alcohol. Everybody has an ID, a photo ID, and they're provided in these bills. But the key here, and especially to Delegate Siravasan, and I didn't know this at first. I thought when we added the electric bill and the different things, your bank statement, that everybody still had to show an ID in Virginia, but it is not true. You do not have to have an ID to vote in Virginia because of the ID confirmation statement, and you can just sign that, say you are that person. Nobody has any idea if you are. There's no way to follow up. It says it's a felony, but there's no way to follow up. We had 103 people vote in Loudoun in this past election with no ID, and so you don't get the provisional ballot like you used.
If you keep your comments to the bill that we're speaking to. All right. Are you there, Ms. Oberlander?
Yes, ma'am. I just would ask the legislators to do something to remove that ID confirmation statement. So you have to use some kind of ID in Virginia.
I'm just speaking to the bill before us, please. All right. So we have.
I thought it required photo ID.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
And it eliminates the ID confirmation statement.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Oberlander. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? And again, if you could keep your comments very brief.
Very brief.
Tram Win with New Virginia Majority, and we strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
I believe we have one person online, Ms. Gayleen Canoyton.
Yes, Gayleen with Virginia NAACP, we strongly oppose this bill. We're not trying to go backwards. We want to move forwards. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments from the Delegate Hinton?
Madam Chair, I have a comment and a motion when appropriate.
Delegate Hinton.
So the comment is basically when we were in full committee, and the Department of Elections stated in 2023, in-person early voting was 553,000 total people. Mail was 220,000 people, and drop-offs is 26,000 people and growing. So my comment is I do not understand why we would want to limit early voting from the 45 days to 30 days, and I just think that that's just absurd. And I have a motion when you're ready.
Delegate Hinton.
I motion that we table this bill.
Second.
Okay. The motion has been made to and properly second to table House Bill 1176. Will the clerk open the roll so the members can record their vote on the electronic voting board? Can the clerk close the rolls? All right, and the bill has been tabled by a vote of 7-1. Thank you so much, Delegate Wyatt. House Bill 1200. All right, that's you, Delegate Scott. I know you've been waiting. And
thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of was lost in thought. It's been quite a long evening. This bill simply addresses early voting, doesn't have anything else to it. It just looks at reducing early voting from 45 days to 2 weeks or 14 days. The comment was made about not moving backwards, but moving forward. And there's sometimes that we have to admit that we did something in a certain circumstance, and the outcome is not necessarily meeting the total desired outcome that we had intended. We heard testimony about a piece of legislation that would open up yet another polling location for early voting on college campuses. And a statement was made that there is no locality in Virginia that has a satellite location for the entire 45 days of early voting, which is absolutely not true. Spotsylvania County does not have the parking at the registrar's office, and every year that we've had early voting, they've had to rent a satellite location for the entire time of early voting. They have to staff that location. Parking can be problematic even at these satellite locations. They're often in shopping centers where there's a lot of other things going on. To address the time frame that people are voting, on average, around 75% of folks are voting within the last 2 weeks of early voting. Now, some localities a little bit more, some a little bit less. Richmond City had 25% vote before that, or 25.68% vote before that 2 week marker, and 74.32% after that 2 week marker. Norfolk, 21.25% voted prior to that 2 week or that 14 day mark, and then also, so it would be 78.75% voted within that 2 week mark. Also, the comment was made about comparing us to other states such as Maryland and New York when the bill was presented about adding additional satellite locations. Well, that'd be wonderful. Let's go ahead and do what they do. I believe it was New York that has 1 week of early voting. It opens the Thursday before Election Day and closes 1 week the Thursday before Election Day. So,
Delegate Scott, who said that? I didn't hear anybody say that.
Delegate Sickles, if you can refer your questions to the chair.
So
you can continue with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of other states that have other means of providing opportunity to vote have a lot shorter early voting period. And so what we're trying to do is we're just trying to bring Virginia in line with a lot of other states. I know that we've heard a lot from Shelley Oberlander on this topic, and so I have full testimony from her outlining some of these things. But one thing that I would like to point out is that while we're in full committee, the former secretary from Kentucky, Secretary of State from Kentucky, had mentioned that Kentucky has 3 days of early voting. I'm not asking the committee to consider 3 days. I'm asking the committee to consider, or the subcommittee to consider 14 days of early voting. Additionally, the former secretary mentioned about raising the wages for the poll workers. a great way to free up funds for the locality to do that is to reduce early voting from 45 days to 2 weeks. And so if we're going to bring in expert testimony to a committee, I think it would be wise and prudent to listen to those things. And so this is a really easy way to do that. Chiefs get $225 a day. Assistant chiefs get $200. Election officers get $175 a day. Prince William County, they had 3 early voting sites for 4 weeks, then 5 for the last 2 weeks. Again, this would be a great way to save the locality money, save them on the perpetual voting that happens in Virginia. This year, 135 days of voting. Even now, with the presidential primary underway, there have been candidates that have dropped out. And so if you're very eager beaver to get out there the first day of early voting, now your candidates are no longer on the ballot. And so I ask that the committee seriously consider the impacts on the localities when doing this and ask that you look favorably upon this bill.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Scott. Because your bill and Delegate Early's bill are pretty much the same thing, what I'd like to do is, Delegate Early, if you would allow, we can allow space for him to present the bill, and we can take comment on both of them and then vote sequentially. So thank you, Delegate Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I love the efficiency. Makes sense. I don't mean to test the committee's patience, since this is the exact same thing as you said, so I'll be very, very brief. This is only about the timing, the 45-day to 14. I think, again, not to be repetitive, but when you have primaries, generals, and specials, I think this truly has turned into something resembling never-ending voting, sort of year-round voting. So I think this is primarily intended to be a cost-saving measure for the general registrars and a quality of life measure. Just a real quick rundown of some other states, just because I think I'm not looking to end early voting. This is just to getting us in line with some other states. I believe California is 29 days, Connecticut 15, DC 12, Massachusetts 17, New Jersey and New York 10, Washington State 18. So I think at the end of the day, this is really a cost-saving measure for localities and general registrars, and I think it gets us in a better place. So I would ask the committee to consider it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Early. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Good evening. And I'm happy to hand out these if you would like to see all of the weeks combined. The last 14 days of voting make up more of the voting than all of the other weeks of early voting combined. So we at Virginia Institute Action are in favor of this bill. Thank you. It saves our registrars a tremendous amount of work burden.
Thank you. Anyone else willing to, is there anyone actually online? We have speaking in favor of the bill, Ms. Gregorian.
Yes, thank you very much. I have 2 points that haven't been made that I would like to say. This bill would streamline the registration process by conforming the existing Virginia Code 24.2/416, which closes the voter registration rolls 21 days prior to elections. If you've ever worked in the polls, there's quite a bit of confusion as to why some people feel that they have to cast a provisional vote while others get to go to the registrar and update their Veris and cast a ballot. Of course, we all know why that happens, but the voter doesn't understand. The voter gets upset when one person, for one reason, unbeknownst to them, gets to cast a ballot and they don't. And I just think it's a good practice to kind of separate the 2 issues, since we already have that on code. The second thing is, I feel that it's fair to newer candidates, new voices. We always want new voices in our elections and running for office. And this is very unfair for new candidates to compete with established candidates and get their message out and be campaigning at the same time that voting is going on. It really shortens their ability to reach the audience. So those are the 2 things I would like to say that haven't been said. I'm strongly in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Oberlander. And I do want to apologize for cutting you off previously. Ms. Oberlander.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Glass, I appreciate it. You've heard some of the reasons I support reducing the 45 days of early voting. And so we are one of the longest, Virginia has one of the longest amount of days. And I had a public official tell me, you can never have enough early voting. It's kind of the ideology thing. But 45 days is too much. We are becoming like a perpetual election. We do have a limit, 365. And we're almost there at 136 days this year with 3 elections. So the 45 days is excessive. And we just ask you to reduce it. The GRs are tired. The us general registrars are tired, the election staff is tired, and there's time that has to go into preparing, doing our logic and accuracy testing, preparing the ballots, and then after the election, there's canvass and there's certification and provisional ballot hearings. So the election just becomes perpetual with 45 days. So we ask you, you're the only ones that can reduce the 45 days to give us something reasonable and sustainable, and as well eliminate some of the problems that occur with the long voting period, the exhaustion I referenced, and then the confusion that I did reference with the elderly and immigrant voters voting in September or January and not realizing that was the election and then coming back to vote again in November or in March. So please do what you can to reduce the extensive 45 days of early voting and bring Virginia closer to what other states, our neighboring states have, and also as well, the data supports the last 2 weeks is when the majority of early voters come out to vote, and you can see it just be a little bit in the beginning and it gradually increases. So we do want some early voting, but 45 days is too long. So I ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oberlander. And actually, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to the bill? If you could make your comments brief.
Jay Deck with the Virginia Education Association, and I'll be very brief. Our legislative committee took action against both of these bills.
Thank you.
League of Women Voters opposes both HB 932 and 1200. Federal law requires that the ballots must be ready to be mailed to military and overseas voters 45 days before the election. Since the ballots are ready, regular eligible voters should be allowed to cast their ballots too. Thank you.
Tram Win with New Virginia Majority, and we oppose the bill.
Thank you. Online, we have Ms. Galen Conoyden. If you could keep your comments brief as well.
Yes, Virginia NAACP, we strongly oppose this bill. We want to expand access, not suppress it.
Thank you. Any further comments from the subcommittee?
Madam
Chair.
Delia Wiseman.
It seems like every year we keep having this discussion, and one of the problems I see is in this committee, there are a lot of unintended consequences that could be at that I think it really deserves a more fuller examination. I'm just curious if maybe we may want to request a JLARC study on this to look at the costs, the savings, what our voters want and don't want. That's all.
Thank you. Delegate Hinton.
I have a motion when appropriate. May I speak to the bill?
Delegate Sickles.
Okay. We're all worried about the poor registrars, but the registrars didn't even speak today. My registrar hasn't called me. I'm sorry that in Spotsylvania they have to move the registrar's office to a parking lot because they don't have room in their office. That's not what this is about. You call it a satellite location. I would call it the registrar's office. I agree that the data shows that people vote more at the last 2 weeks. What's the problem? What problem are we trying to solve? If people want to go or they're going on a long trip or what have you, they can go vote 45 days early if they want to now. And there is not, I don't think everything we do in here is an unfunded mandate, by the way. I mean, we provide a voter file, but unfortunately, this is an unfunded mandate committee. And I haven't heard that the registrars are worn out, they can't do their job, they don't want to let people vote 45 days early. I've not heard that from registrars. So that's why I would support a motion to table if one's made.
Second.
No, I didn't make the motion.
He did not make a motion. Has not been made. Delegate
I was just seconding, thinking that
I did not make a motion.
Okay. So a motion has been made. Is there any further comments from the subcommittee on this bill? No. Great. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to table this bill.
Second.
All right. The motion has been properly made and seconded to table House Bill 1200. Will clerk open the rolls so we can get our votes on the electronic voting board? Clerk, close the rolls. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
The bill has been tabled by a vote of 5-3. Thank you, Delegate Scott, for your time. Also, I will entertain another motion at the.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Hinton.
Motion to table, move to table House Bill 932.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly seconded to table House Bill 932. Will the clerk open the rolls? May the clerk close the rolls. All right. House Bill 932 has been tabled by a vote of 5-3. Thank you so much, Delegate Early.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right, so we've got a couple more from committee members that are actually at the table with us. We'll try to do this as swiftly as possible. I see dreary eyes. So if we can, we'll start with you, Delegate Green, and you can choose to stay at your seat or come up to the podium. We'll start with House Bill 345.
That is to move local elections to May.
You have the floor, Delegate Green.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be brief on it. This bill allows councils with a majority vote to move their elections to May. Having been a formal elected supervisor, I worry about the local issues, the issues of homelessness, the issues of drainage, the issues of rec centers being just overshadowed by big fall elections. So that's the genesis of this. I'll be happy to take any questions, but it was brought to me by several current and former city council members who were worried that the local issues would be overshadowed by big national elections.
All right, any questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Maldonado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking to the bill and a question and speaking to the bill. Do you have, Madam Chair, I would ask the delegate if he has a sense of the impact on the voter turnout for this kind of change?
I do not.
Speaking to the bill, follow-up.
Delegate Maldonado.
So while I appreciate the intention of this bill, one thing that we have learned over time is that when we have these elections at the local levels in this way, that the turnout tends to be around 10%. When we align it, as we worked hard to do, that jumps up to 30 to 40% of voter turnout. So what we all want is for more people to vote. And so I would say that going backwards to move to May actually doesn't benefit the voters of Virginia because the higher turnout happens when we align them. And for that reason, I would recommend that we lay this on the table when the time comes.
First, I have to take public comment. Are there anyone in the audience who wish to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anyone in opposition? All right. We have Ms. Jeannie Hedgewich online. If you would like to speak against the bill, very briefly, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, I know this time is getting late. This bill would totally negate all the hard work of former Senator Lionel Spruill, who passed this landmark legislation to consolidate all the remaining May local elections in November. It's a huge problem. It was a huge problem with low voter turnout. And I think, we need to have faith in the voters so that they can understand what are the local issues and what are the state and national issues. I think it's very disrespectful to the voters to insinuate that they can't determine those issues on their own. And I strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Delegate Srinivasan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make not a question, but a comment that we talked about saving cost of elections throughout the last couple of hours. This would not save cost. Obviously, this would add cost. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have Ms. Gayleen Knoyden on, and if you can give your comments.
Virginia NAACP, we strongly oppose this bill. Again, we want to move forward and not backwards. And look, younger people are getting more involved and they vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments from the subcommittee?
Comment, Madam Chair.
Delegate Bloxham.
So in my area, I've got 17 incorporated towns. I've got 2 counties. So the counties got all there. So it is possible, and it's usually in every election, when you go in to vote in November, a person could actually get like 3 different ballots because of, you'll vote for the state, you'll vote for the county, then you get to vote for your town. So before we killed a bill because from Delegate Campbell, I think it was, because everyone was worried about confusion. This, to me, is the ultimate in confusion in November. For our little towns, there's not much cost because the signs are made out of poster board. We have towns of 300 people. So, I understand where this bill is going. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that not everybody's situation is the same.
Thank you, Delegate Wasserman. Delegate Henson.
Motion when appropriate.
Second.
Delegate Henson.
I move to table this bill.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and properly second to table House Bill 345. Will the clerk open the roll so member can record their vote on electronic voting system? We'll close the rolls. All right, the bill has been tabled by a vote of 5-3. Thank you again, Delegate Green. You have another bill before us. That would be House Bill 44.
Yes, Madam Chair. This bill was brought to me by the electoral boards, not the registrars, the electoral boards and the volunteers. It eliminates 15 days of early absentee voting, which will save, by my estimates, the individual counties millions of dollars by eliminating those 15 days. Currently, we're at the risk of wearing out volunteers. Most of them are elderly, and 45 days is hard for them. It's hard for them to get to commit to that 45-day. Also, hypothetically, had I voted early last week, hypothetically, my candidate would no longer be soliciting my vote at this point in time. So I think that the 30 days is where we need to be. I also have a chart, and I'll be happy to disseminate this, but we have elections every year in Virginia, and we are the only state that has elections every year that has the 45-day period, early absentee voting period. I would bring us down because I don't like California to beat us in anything, so I would keep us at 30, so we're ahead of California. And I think that's very reasonable. I think there's a sweet spot in there, and I think it'll save the counties and localities millions of dollars, and it will not affect voter turnout in any way. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this bill, because it is very similar to the bills we've already had, I'm going to forego public comment on this. If I could, the committee operates by motion.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Hinton.
I move to lay this bill on the table.
Second.
The motion has been made to properly second to lay House Bill 44 on the table. Will the clerk open the roll so the member can record their vote on the electronic voting board? Will the clerk close the rolls? All right. The bill has been tabled by a vote of 5-3. Again, thank you, Delegate Green. We will move over to Delegate Waxman. You have House Bill 1170.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me present House Bill 1170. What this bill does is currently for some of the provisional ballots, you put the inner ballot envelope into the outside green envelope. There's certain requirements that have to be on that ballot to make sure that it is a legitimate ballot. One of those things that was recently added was there an ID? It's not required to have an ID, but there's a checkbox to see if they did receive an ID. What this would do was to also have the registrar or the person receiving it that would put what type of ID that was there, whether it would be a driver's license, phone bill, any of those types of things, just to collect a little bit more information. These envelopes are secured for a period of time. If there was any question, you can go back and find out what ID was presented for that person.
Great. Thank you, Delegate Westman. Any questions or comments from the subcommittee? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition? So I have Ms. Shelley Oberlander online speaking in favor of the bill. If you could just state your name and who you're with and your position.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Glass. That's Shelley Oberlander, Loudoun County Electoral Board, speaking on behalf of myself. I think this is helpful because when the election officers are filling it out, sometimes they don't check the box. And I think if they have to just write what type of ID was used, it will help. And when we electoral board members have to go to provisional ballot hearing, it would eliminate some confusion if the election officer had noted what type of ID was shown, because it would have shown that they had an ID. So we do ask for you to pass this bill. I think it would be helpful just to help the election officers not overlook putting down whether an ID was shown or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oberlander. I believe we have Ms. Galen Conoyton speaking, and again, opposition to the bill. If you could be brief.
Yes, the Virginia NAACP opposed this bill. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further questions from the subcommittee? The committee operates by motion.
Move to report. Second.
The motion has been made to report, and second properly sectioned to report House Bill 1170. Will the clerk open the rolls so the member can report their vote on the electronic voting system? Clerk, close the rolls. Okay. House Bill 1170 has failed to report by a vote of 3 ayes and 5 nays. All right. Thank you. Delegate Wiseman, you have one more bill up, House Bill 1171.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 1171 deals with the time that once the ballots are received, that the registrar's office is to notify the voter so they can cure the ballot. Previously, it said on receipt of a absentee ballot, which is a little bit subjective. Then once the office looked at the ballot, saw that something was missing, then they were to notify the voter within 3 days what was missing. So then the voter would be able to come in and correct that ballot and cure the ballot so it would not become a provisional. And I just realized too that there was an amendment for this one.
Yes, just going to ask you, all right, can you move the amendment, move the amendment, please?
Yeah.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move the amendment. Second.
Okay, the amendment has been,
Madam Chair, this amendment will strike 2 and add 3. So on line 14, it'll say, but no later than 3 business days after receipt. And it is available on LIS and IHOT as well.
There, yes, thank you.
all those in favor of moving the amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the amendment has been moved and understood, so can you continue?
Thank you, and I apologize. But it clarifies a set number of days that the registrar's office is to review these ballots once they come into the mail, and then once they have that date, they have 3 days to notify the voter. We originally had 2. We did change it to 3 at the request of one of the stakeholders. That way it's easier for them to manage doing things in 3s on the same day. The whole intent of this bill is to make sure that these provisional ballots don't stack up in the registrar's office. It's clear that they've got 3 days to do these 2 things. So then more voters will be informed earlier, so then they can come back and cure the ballot. So we have more ballots that are cast as ballots and not as provisional ballots at the end.
Delegate Sickles.
Madam Chair, so I'm trying to understand the problem you're trying to solve, because what is the process now when someone votes provisionally? They either have to come back or the registrar will verify without their ex parte, without them being there, whether they actually live at the address or whatever. They have to do that by noon on Friday under current law. And maybe you could, what are you trying to solve here?
I'm sorry, it's absentee ballots.
Okay.
I had a few voters that were concerned that the registrar's office may be sitting on those absentee ballots and not going through and reviewing them when they came through the mail. So they want, it just kind of clarifies that they've got 3 days to do that process. Just kind of move them along.
I'm sorry.
There's a follow-up question.
Thank you. So I was confused with, I
Thank you.
made myself.
Sorry, thank you, Delegate Sickles. So is there any other questions from the committee? Delegate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate, I have a clarifying question. This is about absentee ballot, mail-in ballots, correct? That is correct. So your bill requires the registrar, once they get my absentee ballot, to process it in 3 business days? To open the envelope, process it in 3 business days? I'm not clear. It says
the way I understand it, there's an inner envelope with the ballot in it, and it's the outer one. And the outer one is the green envelope that's supposed to have the required information on it.
You want that to be registered?
Does the delegate have a follow-up question?
I'm sorry, a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you're not asking it to be processed, you're just asking it to be opened and marked that it was received?
No, actually, the registrar's office has to review that green envelope to make sure it's got the mandatory things on the outside of the envelope for it to be a valid ballot. If it's missing something, this says within 3 days of receipt it, they review it to see if it's got the mandatory things on it. And then if it's not, then they've got the 3 days to notify the voter so the voter can come to the registrar's office, complete what needs to be completed so it's a valid ballot and not a provisional that's not counted right away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, it's been a long night.
It has been. All right, so it seems though we have 2 folks online. Is there anybody that if I ask that you just speak, say you support or you're against? If there's anyone here to speak in favor, just let us know who you are and whether you support or you're against the bill.
Yes, Madam Chair, David Bailey in support. Speaking on behalf of the Voter Registrars Association of Virginia, we appreciate the patron. We reached out to him, and the 3 days is a very reasonable time, and we hope that you will support the bill as amended.
As amended, thank you. And for our 2 folks that we have online, I'm going to just clarify that Ms. Oberlander, you are speaking for the bill, and Ms. Knoyton, you're speaking against the bill. I'll just, if I didn't get that right, if you can speak. So we're going to move forward. Okay, perfect. So any other questions, comments?
Yes.
From Subcommittee? Delegate Henson?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Oberlander, we're going to limit testimony. I'm just verifying that you are online in support of the bill.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oberlander. Delegate Henson?
Madam Chair, I just want to, I guess, add clarity. So this particular bill is just to enhance the curing process, correct?
That is correct, just to make sure that the registrar's office knows those deadlines so they get through it on time so that the voters can be made aware that they need to cure that ballot so that ballot does count. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Sickles?
Move the report.
Second.
With amendments, please.
With amended.
Okay.
Second.
All right. The motion has been made to report with amendments. Can the clerk please open the rolls? May the clerk close the rolls? Well, something got out of here today. Delegate Westman, it's House Bill 1171 has been reported with amendments by a vote of 8-0. Thank you all for your patience and with us today. And there's no further business for this committee. We are adjourned.
Thank you.